Recently, Hoyoverse have been releasing really questionable 4-star characters, but in this video, I am going to give Layla a brutally honest showcase, reveal to you some unique things about her, and most importantly, I'll show you some really interesting teams you can build with her. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Higan Eruthyll, a new 3D real-time strategy RPG. Now, this gacha game is absolutely gorgeous. It features unique art style of like this magic and technology, and the world itself is divided between dreams and reality. And before you think I'm just showing to you some fancy CG clips? Well, those are the actual graphics. You can see for yourself there's a lot of action happening in the battlefield here. Basically, the game uses this interesting card system where you can command characters and use their cool abilities to defeat enemies. And you can come up with all sorts of strategies by carefully picking the cards. And whether you're someone who just likes casual gameplay or wants to theorycraft the best team, well, you can do both in this game. And of course, this is a gacha game. There's gonna be loads of cute and awesome characters you can pull for. Like, my favorite one so far is Cerslet. She's got this wildcard vibe going, and I kinda like it a lot. And you can pre-register to the game right now by using my link in the description, and if the game reaches 1 million pre-registrations, you'll receive a free 3-star character media as a reward. But most importantly, you'll also help support my channel. So make sure to check out Higan Eruthyll now. Look, I won't lie to you, I didn't expect much from C0 Layla, but after building and testing her out, I did get surprised by a couple of things. So, starting off with her personal potential, let's see how much damage you can squeeze out from this sleepy student using a Harbinger of Dawn and Emblem 4-set artifact set. She could also use full sets of Noblesse or Blizzard Strayer, but it really doesn't matter that much, and I'll quickly show you why. Now, her skill by itself deals pitiful 502 damage on initial hit, so we're off to a really rough start, and after 4 stars are gained, they go off one after another and deal 1521 damage each. Now, if I use her burst, it will be deployed in this huge radius, bigger than Ganyu's actually, and then roughly 5000 damage is dealt with each hit for a total of 8 times. So, assuming she can unleash 12 shooting stars from her skill, her total damage including the burst is around 58,000. That's not a lot, and keep in mind, she's got like 250% crit damage and almost 28,000 health, which scales with her burst and skill damage from the passive talents. But okay, what if we use Kazuha to boost her crowd damage and VV shred the enemy's resistance? Well, then her total damage ends up around 96,500. I guess you could say since Layla is half asleep, her damage is also half baked. And the funny part is, if I switch to her fully dedicated support build, which is made up of a Tenacity 4-set and Favonius sword, her total damage is around 23,000. And with Kazuha or other animal support, it ends up about 43,900. Basically, if you use a support build like this one, it will deal 2.5 times less damage than her sub-damage build, but in reality, going from 43 to 96,000 damage on a best-case scenario isn't that big of a deal. But there is one thing we're forgetting, her shield. You see, after activating her skill, her support build can absorb almost 10,000 damage, or 12,300 when Tenacity 4-set buff is active, which boosts shield strength by 30%. On the other hand, her damage build will absorb roughly 8,300 damage, or in other words, her support build shield is about 49% more effective. But come on, if we just look at the numbers, basically the difference without Tenacity buff is only 1,600 damage, so that's like what? A single additional hit the shield could absorb from a weaker enemy like a Hilichurl. Still, when comparing her to other shielders in the game, she actually ends up as the second best shielder besides Zhongli, sometimes third depending on how well Toma's shield is stacked, if we talk about how much damage she can absorb. And yes, that means her shield is better than Diona's. But let's not forget the cat bartender can also heal. So looking at her so far, her damage is kinda negligible, but her shield is pretty great. So what about her cryo application? Remember how I said she can generate up to 12 shooting stars from her skill? Well, that's because by default, every 1.5 seconds, 1 star gets added. But you can also gain 2 more every 0.3 seconds when a skill is used by anyone in the team, and when her burst is deployed, it also generates 1 night star every half a second. Long story short, you can expect her to release these 4 shooting stars at least 2 times. But I was able to unleash 3 times, or 12 shooting stars in total, in many team comps. So, in terms of cryo application, her skill's initial hit will cause a reaction, but it has a very small AoE range. And if it's a single target, only the first shooting star will cause a reaction. So, in total, the skill at most can apply cryo 4 times. The good news are, if the enemies are grouped tightly, that star can hit in a small AoE, and also since each enemy tracks ICD separately, if 4 stars are shot out, it is possible some of them will seek out different targets and apply more more cryo. Now, the bad news is that building up these 4 shooting stars is a bit weird. Like, let's say if you use somebody's skill in the middle of when those shooting stars are going off, you won't add 2 of them to the shield, so the animation has to finish, and then it will count towards creating more stars on the shield. Also, if the enemy attack breaks the shield, well, all the abilities disappear, so no more shooting stars, and you basically just have to rely on her burst until the skill's cooldown is over. Now, her burst will deal a total of 8 hits, and starting with the first one, cryo gets applied. Afterwards, every second hit will create a reaction, so a total of 4 reactions can be caused. If, again, we assume it's a single target, both skill and burst will cause 8 reactions, so all in all, I think that's pretty good, especially since it takes only a few seconds to quickly do her skill and burst, and enjoy all the crab applications she will provide. Finally, her energy generation. It is a bit unique, since the skill's initial hit won't give you energy, and instead, 1 or 2 particles can be obtained every time those 4 shooting stars go off. And if you can achieve this 3 times, then on average, you can expect around 4.5 particles. All in all, the difference between her support and damage builds is not that big, so you can easily mix and match some main stats from artifacts, but I found it's best to focus on raising her health as much as possible after solving her energy recharge. And I would say that while her damage is lackluster, she does offer a nice shield, good cryo application, and energy generation. But the best way to see how well she works would be in this next part. Just like in every other showcase video, keep an eye on the bottom of the screen to see Layla's loadout and stats. Now, the first team I wanted to test out was free-to-play Freeze Comp, which includes Rosaria, Xingqiu, and Sucrose. I think this team is fine. It's definitely nice to have shielding, even with Freeze, because it takes a while to group the enemies up when using this team specifically. So kickstarting the fight with a shield can really help out with survivability. However, because Layla's damage is so low compared to someone like Kaya, I did have trouble clearing this current abyss within a comfortable time frame. Also, because she's using Favonius sword here, and her playstyle is to quickly use her skill and burst, then switch out, I noticed there's only few chances to trigger the passive of the weapon. Since off-field, you cannot trigger it, so her skill's initial hit and the first hit from the burst is going to be the most common scenario. But what am I trying to say here? Well, I'm not sure if Favonius is going to work well with her, because the more time you spend with her on the field instead of using other characters, the more DPS loss you experience, and staying around until Favonius triggers the particles isn't worth it. But on the other hand, because she mainly scales with health, there aren't that many good support sword alternatives, unless we're talking about 5 stars. Moving on, I also put her into Mono Cryo team. What's great about the Harbinger of Dawn she's using it is that again, you use her skill and burst and then immediately switch out. This barely gives a chance for the enemies to damage her, although ironically enough, since the first part of the current abyss contains her favorite wolves, the corrosion they cause will basically negate the weapon's passive. Still, if there are no enemies with corrosion and Mono Cryo has Shenhe, Layla actually becomes a pretty decent damage dealer when Shenhe's quills are utilized. So I think she's definitely an upgrade over Diona in Mono Cryo teams. However, I did notice one thing. Even with 3 cryo units in the team, I wasn't able to trigger Layla's burst off cooldown with 125% energy recharge, which is weird because her burst only costs 40. I guess it makes sense, since she's almost always off field when the particles are getting collected, and you cannot funnel the particles from her skill's initial hit. This becomes a bit of a problem, and since I do believe her burst is actually her best asset here, having enough ER is going to be the main priority when building Layla. Coming up next, remember Morgana team comp? It's actually pretty strong now on the first half of the Abyss I'm showcasing. Although there is that Drake boss who can be frozen and AoE damage becomes less effective, but other than that, Diona used to be the cornerstone of the team, providing energy and healing with some shield, although later on the Chinese community replaced her with Rosaria, and right now, I would say Layla can also replace Diona here as well. Actually, her energy particles are kind of like sustained. They come out when the shield unleashes shooting stars, and by then, it's usually Ganyu using charge shots, so it does help her with energy recharge if we compare this to Diona, who only gains particles up front. By the way, I didn't talk much about it, but Tenacity Forset is probably Layla's best in slot for almost every team comp, including this one. The buff, which boosts attack and shield strength, starts slow because she needs to build up the stars first, but afterwards, it can be maintained quite consistently. I also quickly checked out her synergy with Ayaka. It works pretty well, although if you have Kokimi for survivability, it's definitely better to just stick with Rosaria since she provides so much damage support. One team that I definitely had to try was with Eula. You're probably noticing a pattern that if you could build any teams with Diona, you can also build those teams with Layla Layla. Now, I wanted Eula to dance around gracefully for more damage, so I equipped Layla with Freedom Sworn, which boosts team normal damage and attack. As I said before, there's barely any 4-star support weapons she can use effectively, and this is probably the best one to utilize if you have it, and one to help Eula, because Layla does provide a good shield and great cryo application, so Eula is protected from the world's harm, and it's very easy to refresh superconduct on enemies. Now, because we live in the age of Dendro, I also built a team around the new Fire Goat comp. Bringing a shield is almost a must here, and it used to be Zhongli or Tangfei fulfilling this role, but now, Layla is kind of awesome here. Although it is important to understand her burst may hijack the Pyro Aura on the enemies, so just like with Ganyu, I simply didn't use the burst, and instead, I built as much HP as I could on Layla, and gave the Coco Goat a thick shield so she can fire away those charge shots without needing to worry about enemies interrupting her. Honestly, for this team, it doesn't even matter what weapon she uses. You could go for Favonius, but I think it's better utilized on Benny Boy, so I guess I used Jade Cutter here. Although the Key of Kaj Nizud, or whatever it's called, would be best for a thicker shield. Speaking of which, using this weapon in Bloom teams is kinda awesome. Not only will it provide extra EM from the passive, which is based around her max health, but the shield can also sustain the self-damage from Dendro Cores. Although I would still say using her with Hyper Bloom reactions feels safer. Finally, I just had to do it. What's a showcase without a new character forced into a national comp, am I right? She's pretty decent here. I can't say you need that much survivability, since Benny Boy takes care of it, but at least Xiangling can melt some of her attacks. So, what do I think about this sleep-deprived 4-star? Well, looking at current Sumeru's track record with the recent 4-stars, I'd say she's pretty good compared to them. Other than the fact she loses all abilities when her shield is broken, it is a solid shield regardless, only outranked by the Geo Archon himself. There's also some sustained particle generation she can provide, and she does apply a good amount of crowd to enable freeze and other comps. And if there are no enemies which can cause corrosion, she becomes somewhat decent damage dealer using Harbinger of Dawn in mono crowd teams with Shenhe. Otherwise, her damage can be just ignored. Focus on the shield and the utility because she is very similar to Diona. The biggest difference between the two is that Diona at least can heal, and it's definitely something you'll notice when fighting the wolves. And also, C6 Diona can provide 200 EM from her burst, which can be valuable for a lot of characters, while as far as I know, the most prominent team upgrade for Layla is C4, but I'll probably talk about her constellation potential in a future video. Overall, I think if you already have Diona, then it's probably not worth building Layla, unless we're talking about some few select teams, like Melganyu, where the shield is thicker than Diona's, but not by that much. But really, nothing's stopping you from collecting this character because she is pretty interesting. I mean, honestly, I think the current Abyss cycle is a bit unforgiving towards Layla. The Wolf's corrosion is annoying and the shield gets bypassed, the Husk enemies have a ton of health on them, so it doesn't help with Layla's lack of damage support, and most importantly, most of her teams are built around either freeze or AoE, and this current cycle has bosses on each side, and some other annoying enemies. But hey, at least she can absorb with 250% efficiency those Cryo Lava Troll attacks. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate if you could press the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching the video, and see you soon.